3 years after our divorce, I ran into my ex-husband at the city registry. He was accompanied by his first love and my son. Together, they looked like a picture-perfect family of 3. My 6-year-old son Leo spotted me first. He ran toward me and hugged me tightly. "Mom, I missed you so much," he cried. I gently pushed him away and greeted his father politely. "Getting married? Congratulations." Adrian gave a bitter smile. "No, I'm here for a divorce." "You?" I was stunned for a second. Then I lifted my left hand, showing the diamond ring sparkling on my finger. "I'm here to get married." I never thought I would see Adrian again at the city registry. He had stood up to leave just as I walked in, and we nearly collided. "Clara? What are you doing here?" His tone carried a hint of surprise. "How have you been these past few years?" It seemed Adrian wanted to catch up, but I only wanted to avoid him. "Not bad," I replied. He repeated the words softly and nodded unconsciously. I was about to turn and leave when he suddenly spoke again. "This is the first time we've seen each other in the 3 years since the divorce. Funny coincidence. The last time I saw him was also here, the day we ended our 4-year marriage." I remembered him asking if I wanted to go back and pack my things. I had stopped at the entrance, lifted my head to look at the blue sky, and told him there was no need. I had been packing every day. There was really nothing important left. "What I need to sort out isn't in the house," I had told him. Adrian had been about to open his car door, but his hand froze. His voice turned cold. "You were the one who insisted on the divorce for Isabel's sake. She has no family and she has cancer. You're much luckier than she is. Couldn't you have given in a little?" He had looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. Even Leo knows how to show compassion to a sick person. He was so serious that it almost made me laugh. Lucky? In what way was I luckier than her? I clenched the divorce certificate in my hand. "You don't need me to give in anymore," I said. "All my family belongs to her now." Isabel was the daughter of the Chun family's housekeeper. When Adrian was 8, he and the housekeeper were kidnapped together. The kidnappers only kept Adrian alive for ransom. The housekeeper was killed. Out of guilt, the Chun family took in her daughter, Isabel, and raised her as their own. When they grew up, Adrian and Isabel secretly fell in love. As soon as the family found out, Isabel was sent abroad. First they kept in touch. But a few years later, when the Chun family went bankrupt after a financial crash, Adrian could no longer reach her. It was around that time that I found Adrian standing on a bridge, ready to jump. I stopped him, stayed by his side through his lowest days, and watched him rebuild his career, marry me, and have a son. That lasted until our 5th wedding anniversary, when Isabel suddenly returned from abroad. She showed up with a diagnosis and medical reports, crying as she explained that she had disappeared years ago because she had been diagnosed with cancer. Adrian took her to the hospital for tests, and the results confirmed it was true. When I arrived at the hospital, I saw Isabel clinging to him, sobbing uncontrollably while Adrian gently patted her back. That scene carved itself into my heart. What came after was just as I expected. Isabel took everything from me. "The doctor said cancer patients need the care and company of family," Adrian told me. "She has no one else. I want to take care of her more." "I heard she still has a father," I countered. Adrian didn't expect me to bring that up, and his face darkened immediately. "Who told you that?" "Isabel said he's not her father, just some lowlife she cut ties with long ago." Seeing how he defended her, I didn't say another word. During that time, Adrian stayed at the hospital with Isabel for months, rarely coming home. I was left taking care of 3-year-old Leo. He was a perceptive child. "Mom, they're saying Dad has another woman. Are you two getting divorced?" Leo asked one night. I tucked him in and smiled. "No, your dad and I won't get divorced." Leo carefully reached out and held my hand. "Mom, be strong. I love you." After leaving his room quietly, I called Adrian. "Leo is starting to imagine things. You should come home for a bit." His voice on the other end was low, as if he didn't want to disturb Isabel. "I know." Neither of us hung up, but neither spoke again. There was just silence between us. "Adrian," I finally said. After years of marriage, he understood what I meant without me explaining. Clara, for the sake of her mother, I have a responsibility to take care of her. I leaned back against the wall, slowly crouched down and covered my eyes with my hand. Come home soon, I murmured. When I hung up, I stayed there for a long time. When I finally stood, my vision went dark, and I collapsed to the floor. I fell ill at the most inconvenient time. It wasn't serious, but the doctors said I needed to be hospitalized for observation. Coincidentally, Isabel and I were in the same hospital under the same chief physician. The difference was that Isabel stayed in a VIP ward, while I was in a regular single room. Most people assumed she was the real Mrs. Chun. When Adrian came to see me, his tone carried a trace of guilt. Darling, you don't mind, do you? The VIP rooms are full. It's just a minor illness for you anyway. You won't be staying long. I don't mind, I said. Before marrying Adrian, I was just an ordinary woman. I never cared much for material things. When Isabel heard that I'd been hospitalized, she came by too, carrying a small basket of oranges. The attending doctor, upon seeing her, naturally started discussing her condition. Adrian joined in as well. The doctor suggested a treatment plan. Isabel complained about chemotherapy making her lose her hair, and Adrian said he'd buy her some hats. The mood was light, almost cheerful. I lay half reclined on the bed, holding an orange in my hand, calmly watching them. It didn't feel like I was watching my own husband. Before leaving, the young intern took the orange from my hand and placed it on the bedside table. You can't eat that, he said coldly. After everyone left, Adrian sat back down and started peeling another orange for me. He brought a slice to my lips, still trying to make small talk. Sweetheart, tell me, is losing your hair really that scary for women? I turned my head away. The doctor said I can only have liquid food. Did you forget? His hand froze midair. He laughed awkwardly. I thought fruit didn't count. His excuse didn't convince anyone, but I didn't want to argue. What did you just ask me? Something about being scared. Adrian blinked, caught off guard. Oh, nothing, just talking. Good, I said quietly. I turned my head toward the window. Outside, the scenery was bleak, and so were people's hearts. After I was admitted, Leo came to see me every day. I told the nanny not to bring him. Hospitals are full of germs and not good for a child with a weak immune system, but the nanny said Leo insisted on coming. First I was touched, but every time he arrived, he would ask where his father was, spend only a few minutes with me, and then run off to Isabel's ward. I thought he was just a child, too young to understand, so I gently hinted that he shouldn't go so often. It didn't help. Until one day, I overheard him talking to the nanny. If Dad marries Aunt Isabel in the future, I'll have to stay with Dad, right? Because Mom doesn't have money to raise me. So I should be nice to Aunt Isabel now. Mom won't be mad at me. She's my real mom. Turned out Leo understood far more than I thought. When Isabel started losing her hair from chemotherapy and had to shave her head, Leo shaved his too to keep her company. The three of them sat on Isabel's hospital bed taking selfies, cheering her on to fight the disease. Isabel forwarded the photo to me. Her message said, "Did you really think that just because you stayed quiet I couldn't take what I want?" I held that photo in my hands and sat quietly on my bed from dusk till dawn, through the whole night. And finally I understood something. I was never meant to interfere in another person's lesson in life. Before I was even discharged, Isabel had another incident. Her father broke into the VIP ward and caused a scene. Adrian later found out that I had transferred money to that man several times beforehand. He threw a pile of evidence at me. I never thought about divorcing you. Did you really have to bully Isabel like this? I didn't defend myself. I simply took out the prepared divorce papers. I have thought about it, Adrian, and I've decided. Let's get divorced. Back in the present, the city registry lobby was crowded, people coming and going in an endless stream. Adrian stood across from me. I actually looked for you later, he said quietly. Maybe when he finally thought of me again, he realized I had already disappeared from his world, and that he knew nothing about mine. You looked for me? I asked. Adrian's gaze lingered on me for a moment before he lowered his eyes, pressing his lips together. It was Leo. He kept getting sick back then, and every time he said he wanted his mom. Children get sick easily. It wasn't surprising. Well, it's all in the past now. I lit up my phone screen to check the time. The person I was waiting for should be arriving soon. I still have something too. Before I could finish, a small figure dashed toward me and threw his arms around my waist. Mom, you're here. I missed you so much. It was Leo, now 6 years old. I looked down and gently patted his head before slowly pushing him away. Not far away stood Isabel, paler than she'd been 3 years ago. You're back? I asked lightly. News travels fast, I see. Seeing the three of them together, Adrian, Isabel, and Leo, I assumed they were here to get married. From their expressions, it seemed they thought I was here to ruin it. But today was purely coincidence. Getting married? Congratulations, I said politely. Adrian suddenly lifted his head to look at me. His eyes complicated. You don't know. Even Leo stared at me with confusion. Mom, you don't know why we're here. What do you mean? I asked, startled. Adrian lowered his head, took Leo's hand, and said with a bitter smile, No, I'm here for a divorce. What about you? I froze where I stood. So he and Isabel were already married, and now divorcing? What had happened in these years? Leo tugged on Adrian's hand, then my arm. Mom, are you coming home with us? I snapped out of it, lowered my gaze, and brushed my fingers over my ring. Adrian sighed softly. Clara, I interrupted him, raising my left hand toward him. The diamond on my ring finger caught the light, bright and new. I'm here to get married. Adrian's expression faltered, openly stunned. You're getting married? To whom? To me. My fingertips were gently gathered into another's hand. A man's warm voice followed, calm and affectionate. Sorry, I'm a little late. On his ring finger was a wedding band identical to mine. The Chun father and son stared in silence, speechless. Only Isabel stepped forward, eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to recognize him. Ethan looked up, meeting her gaze. Your illness should be better by now, right? Isabel's expression stiffened. Adrian turned to her. You two know each other? Ethan reached out a hand toward Adrian. We've met 3 years ago at the hospital. Adrian hesitated, clearly not remembering, but shook his hand out of politeness. Really? I don't quite recall. Ethan smiled easily. You were probably too busy. I was an intern under Dr. Lee's team back then. Your wife and Clara were both hospitalized, so I saw you often. Adrian had no response to that. The awkwardness was written all over his face. Ethan withdrew his hand and looked at the couple, his tone courteous and distant. Congratulations to both of you for making it this far. As we turned to leave, Adrian spoke again, his voice low and heavy. I'm here for a divorce. Ethan didn't miss a beat. Still holding my hand, he glanced back at Adrian calmly. Then that's all the more reason to congratulate you. Adrian frowned as if wanting to ask more, but Isabel tugged his sleeve gently. It's our turn. Isabel and Adrian went to the registration counter while Ethan and I sat in the waiting area. He looks like he regrets it, Ethan muttered. What should we do about that? I didn't answer. He clicked his tongue, clearly displeased. I couldn't help but laugh softly. You're nervous? You're a first-time groom. Are you seriously afraid of being compared to a man on his third marriage? Ethan glanced at me, half worried, half amused. He's got a kid. I winked at him. We'll have ours someday too. Just then, Adrian and Isabel came out right in time to see that moment. Adrian's face darkened. Isabel had forgotten some documents, so she called her driver to bring them. Meanwhile, Ethan and I walked up to the counter to register our marriage. The clerk handed us the forms and asked for our signatures. But before I could finish, the pen was suddenly snatched from my hand. Mom, I won't let you marry him. Leo had run up between us, clutching the pen tightly, his expression deadly serious. Mom, Dad's about to get divorced. You two can be together again. Adrian didn't stop him, he just stood there, eyes fixed on me. I glanced at Adrian, then crouched to face Leo. Why are you causing trouble? You supported your dad's remarriage, didn't you? Leo froze, unable to respond. But Dad, he stammered. He couldn't put it into words, but I understood perfectly. To him, Dad was a free man and Mom was just a tool. There's no difference, I said softly. Your dad deserves respect, and so does your mom. Ethan had already signed his part. He handed me the pen, then pinched Leo's cheek, not gently. She gave birth to you, kid. That doesn't mean she owes you. Leo glared at him with pure resentment. He shoved Ethan hard. I don't like you. I hate you. He then grabbed our freshly filled out form and tore it to pieces. I just won't let you get married, he cried angrily as he shouted, his little hands trembling. The commotion drew a crowd. Leo was determined. He wasn't going to let this wedding happen. The clerk came over and advised us to settle family matters first. Finally, Adrian spoke. Clara, you haven't been around Leo much. He probably just can't handle this right now. I ignored the hidden satisfaction behind his tone and looked Leo in the eyes, calm and firm. If I don't marry today, I'll marry tomorrow. You'd better start getting used to it. Both father and son froze, their expressions darkening. Ethan stood by my side, his voice steady. Mr. Chun, is it really appropriate to have your kid fight your battles for you? Adrian's face turned grim. Isabel kept her head down the whole time, pretending she wasn't part of this scene. Since we couldn't complete the registration today, Ethan and I decided to leave. It seemed Adrian wanted to follow, but before he could, I heard Isabel whisper faintly. Maybe she was cheating all along. Ethan heard it too. He stopped dead in his tracks. Then, without hesitation, he turned around and strode straight toward Isabel. He pointed a finger right at her nose and snapped. You've been a homewrecker for so long that you think everyone else is one too? I was ready to ignore you today, but you just couldn't keep your mouth shut. Could you? What's wrong, Isabel? Forgot I was the one who reported your fake medical records back then. Isabel's face went completely pale. I found out later that Ethan was the one who reported the incident. After the divorce, I changed all my contact information and went abroad for 3 months just to clear my mind. I never expected to run into Ethan in a foreign country. I still remembered him, the young intern from Dr. Lee's team. He was the only Ivy League graduate among them, elegant and handsome, with a calm demeanor that made even the nurses whisper that he was pleasant to look at. He was also the same cold doctor who once took the orange from my hand. When we met again overseas, he apologized to me earnestly. I'm sorry. I thought the lady in the VIP ward was Mrs. Chun, so I assumed you were. By then, I was in a much better place emotionally, even capable of joking. You thought I was the mistress? Well, at least that means you're morally upright. Ethan coughed awkwardly. At the time, she was older with a child and you were younger and beautiful. I made an assumption. That was my child, I corrected him. He paused, then said quietly, my apologies. I found out later. I smiled faintly. No need to apologize. And no need to pity me either. I'm completely free now. But Ethan wasn't done. There's another thing I need to apologize for. It turned out that on the day Isabel's father, Frank, came to the hospital, Ethan happened to run into him. Frank said he was looking for Mr. Chen's wife. Ethan kindly advised him to make an appointment first, explaining that Mrs. Chun was in the VIP ward and that visitors couldn't just walk in. Frank, guilty and evasive, didn't clarify further and went straight to Isabel's room instead. I heard that after that Mr. Chun thought you sent him there. And that's why you two divorced. I've felt guilty ever since. That's when it all clicked. So that day, Frank had actually been looking for me. He found Isabel only by mistake. But how did you even know her father? And why did you transfer money to him? Ethan asked. Frank's a shady guy, did he threaten you? Ethan's mind was sharp, logical. I couldn't help but compare him to Adrian. Even an outsider could see things more clearly than my ex-husband ever did. I'll tell you someday, I said softly. Ethan didn't push further. Instead, he took out a silver USB drive and placed it on the table. If you ever want to make things right with Mr. Chun, this might help. What is it? I asked, confused. After you left the hospital, I wanted to do something for you. Eventually, I discovered that Isabel's medical records were fake. This is the evidence. I was stunned, speechless, but I believed him almost instantly. Isabel was exactly the kind of person who would do something like that. Fake records? She bribed the doctor. I asked, shouldn't you have reported it internally? Ethan gave a wry smile. I did. Unfortunately, I ended up reporting it to the person involved. After that, I resigned. It turned out Dr. Lee had been bribed by Isabel to alter her pathology report. Her tumor had been benign all along. Early signs showed no malignancy at all. Ethan lost his job standing up for me. I handed the USB drive back to him. "Thank you for standing up for me," I said quietly. "But I don't need to win anyone back. I divorced him for one simple reason. I didn't want to live with that man anymore." As for Adrian, even if he'd been deceived by Isabel, what difference did it make? Her lies were full of holes, but she had gambled on one thing: his blind affection. 3 years later, Ethan finally exposed the truth about the falsified medical records. "You lied about being sick, didn't you?" Adrian stared at Isabel in disbelief. Tears welled up in Isabel's eyes as she shook her head. "No, I didn't know. I really didn't know anything about that." But suspicion had already taken root in Adrian's mind. "I'll look into it. The divorce registration is on hold." He paused and looked at her. "And I need to reconsider the property division." At that, Isabel lost her composure and grabbed his arm. "We already agreed, didn't we? We're getting divorced anyway. Why are you still hung up on this?" Her voice grew quieter and quieter, guilt creeping in. I understood immediately. That's why she'd been so quiet all day. She was afraid of jeopardizing the divorce settlement. "Mr. Chan," Ethan said coldly, "you should really take a good look at what kind of person your childhood sweetheart is." With that, he took my hand and led me away. We had come in separate cars. He headed back to the hospital, and I drove toward my pottery studio. I had just gotten into my car when the passenger door opened and Leo climbed in. "Mom, I want to stay with you for a while." I didn't refuse. I took him along to my studio. Since returning to the country, I had opened a small pottery shop. I hired 2 young women as assistants, and most days we hosted pottery workshops and sold handmade ceramics. When we entered, 2 families were working on DIY pottery. Their hands were covered in clay, their noses and faces dotted with smudges, yet all of them were smiling. Leo watched quietly, eyes filled with envy. I bent down and asked softly, "Do you want to try it?" He nodded, so I called over a staff member to help him. "Mom, aren't you going to play with me?" he asked tentatively, tugging at my hand. "Mom has her own work to do," I said. After giving birth to Leo, I had become a full-time housewife. That birth nearly cost me my life. 12 hours of contractions and then an emergency C-section because the baby was in distress. When I woke up, Leo was lying beside me. I turned my head weakly to look at him, so tiny, so fragile. His little hands, his little feet, and yet he had torn me apart to be born. I stared at him for a long time before finally smiling. That delivery left me with many aftereffects, and I had to take frequent medical leave. My female supervisor was kind, but I didn't want to burden anyone, so I resigned. After Leo turned 1, Adrian persuaded me not to go back to work. When I finally finished with some orders and came out, Leo was sitting by the table, resting his chin on his arms, guarding a small clay sculpture he had made. When he saw me, he lit up and held it out proudly. "Mom, look. I made a cup. This is our family." Leo had been learning to draw from a young age. He was quite talented. I could tell it was Adrian, me, and him in the middle. I glanced at it once, then handed it to an employee to set aside. "Leo," I said quietly, "your dad and I will never get back together." He pressed his lips together, saying nothing. I sighed. "Is Isabel treating you badly?" He stared at me for a long time, his mouth trembling before his eyes filled with tears. "Why did you have to get divorced? Dad said it was you who wanted it. Are you mad at him, mad at me too?" "Leo," I said gently, "you chose to live with your dad. When Isabel and I were both in the hospital, you chose her, didn't you?" I wiped the tears from his cheeks with my thumb. "It's true that I was the one who filed for divorce. But your dad and you were the first to stop wanting me. Love has to go both ways. I'll never stop being your mom, but I won't go back for you. Tell me, is Isabel making you unhappy?" Leo buried his face in my shoulder and began to sob. "She bullies me. I try to be nice to her, but after she and Dad got married, no one at home listens to me anymore." I patted his back gently to comfort him. Of course, a new wife meant new loyalties. The servants wouldn't treat him the same way they did when I was around. Leo lifted his tear-streaked face. his voice trembling with hope. Mom, I'm sorry. Are you still mad at me? You're the only one who's ever been good to me. You're my real mom, my only mom. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand, swallowing his sobs. Dad misses you too. Please come back. I was never angry with Leo, only disappointed. When he tried so hard to please Isabel, I realized he just wanted to be Adrian's son, not mine. Now he regretted it, but I didn't. No, Leo, I said softly. Mom has a new family now. You need to respect me, just as you respect your dad. Leo stayed with me the entire afternoon. Even when closing time came, he still refused to leave. I called Adrian to pick him up. But over the phone, Adrian said he and Isabel were handling the divorce paperwork and asked me to keep Leo for a few days. Clara, I know you don't want to see me, he said, his tone soft. But Leo is your son too. He's safest with you. I hesitated for a long time, then refused. I live with Ethan now. It's not appropriate for me to take care of my ex-husband's child. The line went quiet for a while before he replied, Then I'll come. Not long after he arrived. A black Bentley pulled up by the curb. The glass door swung open with a soft chime from the shop's welcome bell. The father and son, both impeccably dressed, looked utterly out of place in the warm clay-scented pottery shop. Leo clung to my hand, refusing to let go. Leo, go with your dad. I'm closing up, I said, brushing past him. But Adrian suddenly grabbed my wrist. You divorced me over Isabel, he said through gritted teeth. And you never even explained why you were transferring money to Frank. He tightened his grip and stepped closer. I'll ask you just once. When you asked for a divorce, was it because of that doctor? I stared at him, stunned. Adrian, do you really think everyone's like you? One of my hands was trapped in his, so I used the other and slapped him hard across the face. He didn't dodge. He took it straight on. Red finger marks flared against his cheek. So I misunderstood you, he said quietly. He lowered his head and loosened his hold a little, but his voice was still steady. I was fooled by Isabel, yes, but you transferred money to Frank. I can't help but doubt you. Then a calm voice cut in from the doorway. If I were you, Ethan said, I'd go ask Frank instead of suspecting my own wife. Isn't that the logical thing to do? He walked over, his expression cool, his eyes sweeping over Adrian's hand still gripping my wrist. Let her go, he said evenly, or I'll make you. And I'd rather not embarrass you in front of your son. 3-1. Adrian released me. I'll investigate it, he said. Clara, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. His apology meant nothing now. Without hesitation, Ethan told both father and son to leave. After closing the shop door, he looked at me with mock resentment. I just finished cooking dinner, he said, his tone half jealous, half teasing. You weren't home yet, so I came to find you, only to see your family reunion. He was sulking, a little possessively, but not without humor. I stifled a smile and cupped his face in my hands. Is that so? Then let's hurry home and eat. Wait, he murmured. Ethan lowered his gaze, wrapped an arm around my waist, and kissed me deeply. Outside, in the Bentley parked by the curb, the tinted windows rolled up, hiding Adrian's dark expression as the car slowly pulled away into the night. When we got home, dinner was already set on the table. Ethan was a great cook. After resigning from the hospital, he joined a postdoctoral research program abroad. Back then, I didn't know anyone overseas. Every weekend, he'd ask me out to eat. After a few months, I'd grown tired of bland Western food, so he offered to cook for me instead. That first meal he made was incredible, so good that I couldn't say no when he showed up again with groceries. By the 100th meal, he set up a candlelit dinner to celebrate. Halfway through, he looked at me seriously and confessed, Clara, I like you. I really do. I hope you'll consider me. Not just my cooking. He truly moved me. But after a failed marriage, I had my reservations. You know my situation, I told him. I have a son, and he lives with my ex-husband. He smiled lightly. Don't worry. My vision's better than his. And just like that, we naturally ended up together. By then, I had been divorced for over a year. A gentleman's revenge can wait 3 years. Ethan took that literally. After returning to the country, he reopened the old case. Dr. Lee was detained for investigation, and Isabel's bribery of the doctor was also exposed. Word spread that she was under official review. Meanwhile, Adrian was working with his lawyers to amend the divorce settlement. Every afternoon after school, Leo had his driver bring him to my pottery studio. Even when I wasn't there, he would sit quietly and wait for hours. Over time, everyone in the shop knew he was the son of me and my ex-husband. Sometimes Adrian came to pick him up himself. Before leaving, he'd always buy 2 expensive pottery pieces from the shelves and pay for them at the counter. One afternoon, I walked in and overheard my 2 assistants gossiping. "The boss's rich ex-husband is really handsome. Do you think he's trying to win her back?" "Probably. But the boss already has a boyfriend, I've seen him. And she rarely comes to the shop anymore. Totally not interested in reconciling." "Hey, you've seen both men. Which one's more handsome?" The current one. The way the boss looks at him, wow." I deliberately cleared my throat as I entered. They both shut up immediately. Adrian was sitting on the sofa in my office. On the desk was a blue folder. When I opened it, I saw it was a property transfer agreement. Adrian had already signed it. "When we divorced, you took the money and left," he said quietly. "These are the properties and company shares you were supposed to get back then, your share." I flipped through the papers. The assets were worth nearly $10 million. He was being sincere. I closed the folder and placed it beside him. "You're only doing this because Isabel's been causing trouble," I said evenly. "It reminded you of how decisive I was when I left." "I understand, but I can't accept it." I paused, then added, "Give it to Leo instead. I'm not there to take care of him." Adrian stared at the folder for a long time, then lifted his gaze to me. "My marriage with Isabel, it wasn't what you think. I thought she was dying, and Leo got along with her." I cut him off. "You don't need to explain. Just make sure you're a better father if you ever remarry." "I'm not going to remarry," he said. "Don't say meaningless things," I replied calmly. "A year or 2, maybe 5, he would. Even if he didn't marry again, there'd be someone else." Adrian gave a bitter smile. "You don't trust me anymore." I said nothing and turned to leave. He stopped me. "I looked into Frank," he said quietly. "He's dead." Ethan went with me to the crematorium. Adrian came too. The unclaimed ashes were kept in a temporary storage area. The staff confirmed my relationship to the deceased. "He was my foster father," I said. After paying the fees, I received Frank's ashes. The 3 of us rode back together in silence, thick, heavy, and strange. Finally, Adrian spoke hesitantly. "You and Isabel. Did you know each other growing up?" "Yes," I answered softly. "Before you ever met her." The car stopped along a mountain road. I stepped out, opened the urn, and poured the ashes into a narrow ditch where fallen leaves floated on the water. "Adrian," I said quietly, "the day I saw you by the river, I recognized you. You were the boy my mother saved. When I was 5, my mother and I moved to this city. She was lucky. She soon found work as a housekeeper for a wealthy family. She often brought me expensive snacks and toys, hand-me-downs from the little boy of that household who no longer wanted them. Our neighbor, Frank, was pursuing my mother at the time, though she never liked him. Frank's daughter, Isabel, used to come play with me. She always snatched my toys, and though I disliked her for it, she was my only friend. Until one day my mother didn't come home. When Frank found out, he sent Isabel to stay at my place to keep me company. Later, when the Chun family came looking for us, Frank lied and told me to go find my mother, while Isabel took my place. Frank and the Chens claimed that Isabel was the illegitimate daughter of my mother and Frank. They received a large compensation from the Chun family. Frank used that money to settle in a small town and later married another woman. His days drifted by in drunken ease. I grew up under the care of my foster mother. When she passed away, I returned to this city, drawn somehow to the Chun family's news. That was when I saw Adrian Chun standing by the river, ready to jump. I didn't hesitate. I climbed over the railing and pulled him back. At first, I just didn't want the boy my mother had once saved to die like that. I never expected that moment to take me so far with him. Adrian froze like he'd been struck by lightning. His lips trembled, and his whole body went rigid. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" My voice was calm, almost serene. I never planned to. When Isabel came back I thought about it, but you were already holding her in your arms. After that there was no point. I've been holding the winning cards all along, but I didn't want to win anymore. Because what would victory mean? A husband blind to truth? A son selfish beyond reason? I'd thought long and hard about it, and decided to walk away. To take responsibility for my own life and step out of the mud. Adrian's eyes were red, disbelief and pain flickering across his face. I thought I owed Isabel a life, he said hoarsely. That's why I tolerated her hurting you. But the one person I wanted to spend my life with has always been you. I shook my head. No, Adrian. What you tolerated was your own weakness. You favored Isabel. You made excuses for her. You wanted to be deceived. Her illness was fake. Her story was fake. Even Frank showing up at your door, you never checked any of it. Were those lies so hard to see through? When you were evaluating me, I was evaluating you too. And I realized, you're not the man I can share my life with. I never regretted saving Adrian, nor did I think I'd lost to Isabel. There were only two things I did regret. Marrying him and giving birth to a child. But that's all right. It's not too late to fix what I can. Adrian stood speechless under my words. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes glistening, his voice trembling. So the divorce wasn't because you were jealous of Isabel. You just didn't want me anymore? That was his takeaway. His eyes were pitiful, desperate for me to deny it. But I didn't. Yes, I said firmly. I don't like fighting over things, especially when there's nothing worth fighting for. If Isabel could take him, then she could have him. I got into the car and turned back to look at him one last time. Adrian, I said, we're not on the same road anymore. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing on the mountain road, growing smaller and smaller until he disappeared from sight. Later, I took Ethan to visit my mother's grave. Mom, Frank is dead, I said softly. I'm doing well. The road was hard, but it led to light. Ethan placed a bunch of yellow daisies before the tombstone. I'll take good care of Clara, he said. The breeze stirred the flowers gently, and for a moment, my mother's smiling face in the photo seemed more alive. I think she really likes you, I whispered. Ethan wrapped an arm around my shoulder. No, he said with a quiet smile. She's warning me to treat her precious girl well. I rested my head on his shoulder, tears cold against my cheeks. Adrian and Isabel got divorced. Isabel didn't get a single cent. She stormed into my shop one afternoon, slamming her hands on the table. You told him, didn't you? Are you happy now? I just wanted to take the money and go abroad. How does that even affect you, Clara? But behind her hysteria I caught something else. Frank's dead, I said quietly. Why are you in such a hurry to leave the country? Isabel froze. The bravado drained from her face, replaced by something twisted and uneasy. I don't know what you're talking about, she snapped, then turned and fled. A dark suspicion flashed through my mind, something awful yet seemingly impossible. Surely she wouldn't dare, right? But reality proved me right. A few weeks later, Isabel was arrested at the airport. After I divorced Adrian and left the country, Frank began extorting Isabel, threatening to expose her fake identity unless she paid him. Cornered and furious, Isabel ran him down with her car. Frank, gravely injured, had managed to stumble a few dozen meters over a mountain trail before falling into a ravine. That delay was why the investigation took so long. Some time later, Adrian showed up at my shop again. He was holding Leo's hand. Both were neatly dressed. In his arm was a bouquet of Ecuadorian roses. I've cut all ties with Isabel, he said solemnly. I sold the house she lived in, the car she drove. There's nothing of hers left in my life. Clara, I want to win you back. He handed me the roses. I took them and tossed them straight into the trash can beside me. Those things don't matter, I said flatly. What matters is the people she's touched, the ones most filthy of all. For a moment Adrian's eyes dimmed, but he forced a determined smile. It's okay. You don't like me, that's my fault. But I'm not giving up. Leo tugged at the corner of my shirt. Mom, please give Dad another chance. We can be a family again. I pried his small hand off my sleeve. Don't come here again, either of you. Leo bit his lip and began to cry. After that day, I stopped going to the shop. My young assistant later told me that Adrian came by every day with Leo. The two of them made pottery together, mugs, plates, painted vases, and filled an entire wall with their creations. Each piece was decorated with our old family photos. Eventually, I decided to visit the shop myself. Adrian arrived late. "Sorry," he said, a faint bruise at his temple. "There was a small car accident on the way, but I'm fine." He looked a little disheveled but strangely cheerful. I met his gaze and spoke evenly. "I came to tell you, stop doing this." Adrian stood before the wall of handmade pottery, his gaze unfocused, his voice low. "When I made these with Leo," he said, "it felt like going back in time. Back when the three of us were really happy." Then suddenly he dropped to one knee. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. "To run into you again at the city registry, that was fate," he said, his tone trembling between hope and desperation. "You hadn't gotten married yet. That must have been heaven giving me another chance to fix everything I did wrong." He looked up, eyes locked on mine, and slowly opened the box. The diamond ring inside gleamed brighter, larger than the one from our wedding years ago. "Clara," he pleaded softly, "what's so good about that doctor? You haven't even married him. Why not give me a chance?" I reached out my hand. His expression lit up, a fragile flicker of hope. But instead of taking the ring, I pressed my fingers to the lid and gently closed the box. "You're mistaken," I said quietly. "We didn't register that day, because the city registry closed early. We went back the next morning." I looked down at him, my tone calm, final. "I'm married, Adrian." The box slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor, rolling until it hit the leg of a table. Adrian froze in place, still kneeling, like his body hadn't caught up to what he'd just heard. Samuel and I had already held our wedding ceremony abroad. We only returned home to make it official here. "Adrian," I continued, "I called you here today to tell you this. I'm transferring ownership of the pottery shop. Ethan is moving overseas to take over his father's private hospital, and I'll be immigrating with him." Ethan's family wealth was something far beyond Adrian's imagination. Color drained from Adrian's face. He staggered to his feet, his voice cracking. "You mean you're never coming back? What about Leo? You're just going to leave him?" "Tell Leo the first said goodbye," I replied simply. I went to inform my two employees about the shop transfer. When I turned back, Adrian was still there. "The pottery pieces on that wall," I said. "Take them if you want. Otherwise, I'll have them all destroyed." He didn't answer. He sat down on the sofa, head lowered, one hand covering his eyes. His shoulders trembled violently. Then, one by one, he began smashing the pottery. Each crash echoed through the small shop like a breaking heart. When it was done, he crouched among the shards, fragments of color and memory scattered across the floor. He buried his head in his knees, and his hand, gripping a jagged piece of porcelain, bled red against the white tiles. The man who once had everything was now surrounded by ruins, weeping soundlessly for the life he had shattered with his own hands. Isabel went to prison. Adrian bought my old pottery shop. And Ethan and I were finally leaving the country. At the airport, after I scanned my boarding pass at the gate, I heard a familiar voice crying out behind me. "Mom!" Leo's voice was hoarse and desperate. I turned around. He was standing just outside the security line, tears streaking down his face. Behind him was Adrian, eyes rimmed red, his right hand still wrapped in gauze. Leo spotted me instantly and broke into a run, trying to push through the crowd to reach me. Ethan looked at me, his tone gentle. "If you ever miss him, you can have him visit during school holidays." I thought for a moment. Maybe not for the next few years. Ethan frowned slightly. "Why not?" I slipped my arm through his and smiled up at him. "Because I'm pregnant." His eyes widened in shock. "Really?" "Of course," I said, laughing softly. "I hinted at it when we were at the city registry." He blinked, then smacked his forehead with a laugh. "I thought you were teasing me." Joy spread across his face, the kind that warmed the heart. Outside the gate, Leo had reached the barrier, just in time to overhear our conversation. "Mom, you're having a new baby?" he asked, his small voice trembling. His face crumpled with heartbreak. I nodded. The airport loudspeakers echoed with boarding announcements as I looked at him one last time. It's time for me to go, Leo. Goodbye. He stood frozen in place, staring after us as tears fell down his cheeks. And then through the hum of the crowd, I heard his voice again, soft, broken. Mom, I'm sorry. I heard it, but I didn't turn back. Ethan and I settled overseas. A year later, we welcomed a beautiful baby girl. Ethan loved taking care of her. So much that I barely had to lift a finger. Still, he worried I'd get bored, so one day he said to me with a grin, "You're at the perfect age to start a PhD." I laughed, but he meant it. So I took his advice, continued my studies, focused on myself, and built a new life. Years passed. One day I saw Isabel again. She was bald, sitting in a wheelchair, frail and pale as paper. The irony was almost cruel. She had actually developed cancer. Too afraid of being exposed back then, she hadn't gone for her regular checkups. By the time the tumor was discovered, it had already turned malignant. Now serving her sentence outside prison for medical reasons, she'd seen countless doctors, all of whom gave her the same verdict: 3 months left to live. But that had nothing to do with me anymore. On the day of my PhD graduation, I posted a photo on social media. In the picture, I was wearing my doctoral gown, holding a bouquet of flowers, smiling radiantly. Beside me stood Ethan, holding our daughter tightly, pride shining in his eyes, brighter than mine. And in that moment I realized, this was the family I had chosen for myself. The end. Please subscribe for more stories.